Hi, everyone. I'm Aimee Brady, Orion's Executive Director and Publisher. And this is Dorothy, my lemon tree. Dorothy and I have been through a lot together, from cross-country road trips to big life changes. For every major phase I'm going through, she's experiencing one of her own. For example, as we transition into spring, she's starting to put out her first tiny lemons of the year. Dorothy is but one of many trees I've befriended over the years, from small fruit trees like her to large oaks and sycamores in the local park. Like many of you, I'm sure, I'm in awe of how trees make our planet better by providing oxygen, improving air quality, preserving soil, and supporting wildlife. By their rooted connectedness to each other and to us. That's why tonight we're celebrating Trees and Orion, a magazine that has for more than 40 years provided space for poets, writers, and artists who remind us to appreciate the profundity and the vitality of our arboreal friends. And not only that, starting with our spring 2024 issue, Orion is now printed on 100% recycled paper made from post-consumer waste. To celebrate all of this, we have many special guests tonight. Making appearances are Sandra Cisneros, Aimee Nezhukumatathil, and Jane Hirshfield, and we'll enjoy the return of Orion's biannual award program. This year, receiving the Orion Barry Lopez Award for Achievements in Letters and Environments is Richard Powers, whose novel, The Overstory, revealed to millions of readers worldwide the significance of trees to our history and to our future. His award will be presented by author and founder of the Marginalian, Maria Popova. And receiving the Orion Jane Goodall Award for inspiring courage in action is author, botanist, and educator Robin Wall Kimmerer, whose book Braiding Sweetgrass reminds readers that we can learn so much from other living things, if only we remember to listen. Presenting her award is author Ed Yong. Throughout the evening, our host, Harry Santaolalla, will be asking for your help in supporting Orion so that our long history of publishing work about trees can continue in the months to come. Please give as generously as you can tonight. Every dollar helps. In a moment, I'll turn things over to Harry, but first, a few thank yous. Many thanks to our sponsors, and especially the Barry Lopez Foundation for Art and Environment, Milkweed Editions, W.W. Norton & Company, Echo Books, and the Yale Forum for Religion and Ecology. And many more thanks to the Gala Host Committee for their tireless efforts to ensure that this evening is a success, and to Orion's Board of Directors for their unwavering commitment to our mission. Thanks to Orion's staff for their work on making this event and the magazine a reality. And finally, thanks to all of you for being here tonight. Your support will help Orion to continue pursuing and living up to the promise of our mission, to bring all readers into a community of caring for the planet. So thank you again.
I'm Jane Hirshfield, reading The Age of Maples. Age also of maples, still wearing their big-handed leaves, of cotoneaster red again with new mustard berries, of sunlight and shadow, trapeze artist squirrels. Once a one-day blizzard of birds whose bodies' feathered enamels gleamed. It isn't hunger, this looking. It isn't thirst. The eyes just want to see what they will be leaving, the way birds flock to eat what will be gone because they have eaten.
Hi, I'm Aimee Nezhukumatathil, and I'm going to read a selection from Lace and Pyrite, my chapbook co-authored with Ross Gay. It goes from an entire year documenting our gardens, and I'm going to read the selection from spring. No shadows here, only mud. Praise the caked-up trowel, the hand rake, and grass scissor. I want to kiss each crumble of sun-baked earth as my sons welcome iris and drunk ants whirl rush over each juicy peony bud. After warm rains come the spring peepers, shivering out of the mud and sitting half in, half out of a puddle. You must know the bees have come early this year too. I see them visit aster, sweet williams, bleeding hearts, and azalea blossoms hardy enough to not have crisped with the last late frost. Whatever light bees give off after the last snow, I hold up to you now. I cannot explain the click-step of beetles. You are on your own for that. I grew up with patience for soil and stars, lace and pyrite. I believe in an underworld littered with gems. In another life, I have to. Sometimes I lose track of all the bees and their singing. You thought I said stinging.
Hello, I'm Ed Yong. I'm a science writer and the author of An Immense World and I Contain Multitudes, and I am a huge fan of Robin Wall Kimmerer. So it is my immense pleasure today to present Robin with the Orion Jane Goodall Award. This award honors activists, educators, and organizers whose work has mobilized environmental awareness and stewardship. And I can think of few people who fit that description better than Robin Wall Kimmerer. Robin is a mother scientist, decorated professor, and enrolled member of the citizen Potawatomi Nation. She is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants, and Gathering Moss, a Natural and Cultural History of Mosses. She is a SUNY Distinguished Teaching Professor of Environmental Biology and the founder and director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment. Robin's work has consistently interwoven Western science with Indigenous knowledge and wisdom. Her books, Gathering Moss and Braiding Sweetgrass, find hope for a sustainable future in the tangled communities of the botanical world, where, as she once wrote in Orion, even grammar can be a tool of the revolution. Her work as a professor has inspired thousands of students to reimagine the identity of the plant life before them. To read her and to hear her is to stretch our understanding of empathy and to wear away at the boundaries between ourselves and our surroundings. Robin, huge congratulations on this award, and thank you for taking the time to speak to us today. So I wanted to start by talking about something you wrote about at the very start of Braiding Sweetgrass, where you wrote about talking to this class of 200 students and being dismayed at the fact that they couldn't, between them, think of a single positive interaction between people and land. You wrote that as land becomes impoverished, so too does the scope of their vision. And that really struck me because I feel strongly that one of the greatest purposes of good writing is to expand the moral imagination, to show people what is possible, what a better future might look like. And that really resonates with me throughout all of your writing. It's very positive. You don't shy away from describing ecological woes or the challenges we have before us, but it's not a laundry list of problems, right? You offer a clear way forward to us. Is that something that you think about a lot when you're writing? Is that need for positive action part of what animates your work?
Absolutely, because we don't need, we know the stories of destruction that are around us. We see them, we are living them, but clearly we have forgotten what it means to participate in a reciprocal, generous, compassionate way with the living world. And that is exactly my point. And I love how you talk about this in expanding the moral imagination, right? To say, we could reconceive, I would say actually remember ourselves differently, that we can be givers to the natural world as well. So that is exactly my hope, as an antidote in a way to the despair that is seeded by the circumstances in which we find ourselves.
Right, and I think that despair is so very potent, but it's also anathema to action, to any of the things we need to do. Right, that kind of nihilistic thinking is very seductive, but it's not helpful. And I love that you have provided this beautiful alternative to that, and something that I think is much more compelling and much more like, instigating of action.
Well, and sometimes I think our paralysis in the face of these challenges comes because we don't know what to do, right? That we have to develop new solutions. But I'm really drawn to the idea that we already have the solutions. We have this human capacity that is really grounded in the love that we have for the natural world. We know, don't always act on, but know what to do when we love one another, right? That kind of care, that kind of respect and reciprocity, that kind of sacrifice. And so the call, I think, is to activate the love that we know, and activate and extend that to the more than human world as well. When I look around and at all of the woes that surround us, there's a way in which I think of it as a failure to love the world enough. And that could we, as writers, activate that human love and compassion for our own species and extend it to the more than human world as well.
Can you say more about how you do that, like how you think about doing that? Because that concept of reciprocity, of the mutual gift giving with the land, is so pervasive in all of your writing.
Yeah, let's start with the idea of asking permission, because that can feel really strange to people. Like, what? I'm going to ask permission before I, cut this tree down. I'm going to ask permission before I take this water. Yeah, and here is a place where I think practical reverence. These are really practical steps, right? And Western science can converge, because one of the ways that we ask permission is, I think, to gauge our impact. It's like saying, do you have enough to share? And you can use science to evaluate that. Is the population healthy enough? Is it resilient? Is the age structure appropriate to the harvest? Those kinds of really empirical ways of judging the answer, to ask, to take. But there's also the intuitive tools that we have to say, is this the right thing to do? That we engage mind, body, emotion, and spirit in answering that question. In a really pragmatic way, an environmental impact statement is a way of asking permission and judging whether the harm is appropriate or not. We know this. We can use those kinds of precepts, but we have to use them in a really value-laden and cultural context as well.
Flies have compound eyes, humans have camera style eyes. No one has any problem like understanding that a fly can see with a completely different form of eye than we have. To then start thinking about the structures that might allow a plant to think, right? Like, what does that mean? What might plant intelligence look like? Or how is that situated in the anatomy of an organism with a very, very different layout than what we have? Like, that's it. It does force you to grapple with concepts and ideas that are even harder than just like looking at a weird insect eye, and I think that's for the good. You can sort of look at that challenge and recoil from it and just think, no, it's a silly question, plants are dumb. Or you can, I think, kind of embrace the challenge and understand, try and really think about what completely different organisms are experiencing in the world. And I think the second path to me just seems to be much more fulfilling, and ultimately like much more scientific, I guess, like much more interesting.
Mhm, mhm. And opens us to that notion that is so prevalent in indigenous thought the world over, and that is the plants as teachers. That
Right.
they have so much to teach us, but we have a lot of unlearning to do in order to learn from them, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Robin Walker, you are an absolute titan of nature writing. I have endless respect for you and your work, and congratulations on the Orion Jane Goodall Award. It's so very well deserved. I can't wait to see what you're doing, what you're going to do next.
Miigwech, Ed, thank you for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Welcome, friends of Orion Magazine, to the red oak tree in my backyard, here on a 1/4 acre in Columbia, Missouri. My name is Liz Lucas, and I'm currently the chair of the board of directors of Orion Magazine, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this event tonight to celebrate trees. Missouri is the home of many red and white oak trees. We're also home to the eastern redbud and the flowering dogwood, the pawpaw and the black walnut. The shortleaf pine once thrived in many communities here in Missouri, but most of those communities were cut down by loggers in the early 20th century, and we don't see them anymore. Maybe you've joined us tonight to celebrate trees. Maybe you've just started reading Orion Magazine and you're curious and you want to know more. We're delighted to have you. Maybe, like me, you've been a fan of Orion Magazine for a long time, have been inspired by the writers and the art in its pages, and you want to see it continue to thrive. By now, most of us, if we're paying attention, are aware that oftentimes we need to act to support and protect the things we love. Survival is not a given. If this is your first Orion event, welcome to our community of caring for the planet. If you're a longtime supporter, thank you for all you've done for Orion over the years. Together, we can act to support and protect this magazine that we love. Please consider giving a gift to Orion tonight. Your gift will ensure that Orion continues to nurture and nourish a community that cares deeply about trees and all of nature, from the very small details to the very big picture of our gorgeous planet. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maria Popova. I'm a reader and a writer, and it is my tremendous pleasure to introduce, on behalf of Orion, the Barry Lopez Award to Richard Powers. Richard, hello. What a joy. Richard, I was thinking, this is an award for environmental writing. And yet, what has always so moved me about your work is that, well, the term environment already has an anthropocentric bias. It means that which surrounds us. And it's actually less than 2 centuries old, the word itself. 1827, Carlyle coined it, translating Goethe, a German word that kind of means vicinity, but in his translation, it meant the aggregate of the conditions in which an organism or a thing lives. And it strikes me as this term of selfing, right? It means something that is around us, encircles us, centers, revolves around us. And yet what you achieve in your writing is this most beautiful, difficult, redemptive thing that art can do for us, which is to extend an invitation for unselfing. And whether you're writing about astrobiology or the migration of sandhill cranes, there's this feeling that human experience is part of this, not centrality, but interbelonging. And I just wonder how you think about those things and the notion of environment.
What a brilliant start. And I have to say, Maria, I'm a little tongue-tied, a little starstruck to be talking to you. I sincerely doubt that I'll be able to rise to the level of articulateness of the question. But I, I, I think you've really put your finger on a central aspect of my journey, and that realization that what I wanted most to use fiction to do was to unself, or to distribute the self into other places and other perspectives, to say, who would I be if I were not me? And to break down all the kinds of exceptionalisms, which really we inherit as a kind of hierarchy of ways of differentiating ourselves. And this notion, I'm fascinated by your work on the etymology of environment, and to find a kind of crypto-human anthropocentrism in that word, because I kind of made that discovery, backwards. Again, while working Overstory, this gradual realization that most of us had grossly misinterpreted the engine of natural selection, the way that it's typically formed and taught, this idea of fitness, because of that word environment. That the idea that there was somehow a constant, relentless competition for becoming fitter than everything else. And so much of the literature of capitalism, so much of the literature of the self, so much of the culture of individual commodity mediated meaning depended on a kind of misunderstanding of what that meant, what fit for the environment meant. And it was my kind of belated aha moment, realizing that environment actually wasn't this set of physical operative terms that we think of it ordinarily being, and instead realizing that environment meant other living things.
Part of our confusion about where we belong and what we are has to do with much more fundamental realities of nature as a whole, on the level of matter and time and space, and this sense that the molecules we're made of, the DNA we're made of, all of that came from stars that died long ago, that all the way, chance events dating all the way back to the Big Bang gave rise to these molecules that in turn give rise to music and love and things that didn't have to exist, and yet here we are. And I think seeing ourselves as particles of this great totality is really kind of the step beyond environment, beyond even planetary. But of course, I think, have to think in these selfing terms, because it is a way to bear our mortality. Because the moment we recognize that we are these atoms with consciousness that came from dead stars, we also realize that we will return to that in a finite amount of time, that we have to do all of our living and all of our singing. And I think your books are in a way both a consolation and an assurance that that's nature, that is our destiny as creatures.
It's so gratifying to hear you talk about books from a third of a century ago and see a continuity with what I'm doing at this point in my life. And it's a great reminder to me too that the variable that needs to be introduced is the variable of time, that we are those things by virtue of a constant process of unfolding.
I mean, it's interesting that storytelling, the stories we tell ourselves about how the world works and what is possible and what we are in a way our only antidote to time, to entropy, to the dissolution that is our destiny from birth on, and story is how we hold on to life. And I wonder, I mean, I have felt this great kinship with you in a sense that I think we both write from a place of being wonder smitten by reality. And there is a lot of science in your books. There's a lot of, to me, science is our primary instrument of fidelity to reality, of reverence to reality. And as such, it is deeply poetic because there is so much poetry in just the way nature works. I wonder what role science plays in your mind, in your world, in your writing, how you came to weave it in so poetically into fiction.
Well, I always thought that I would be a scientist when I was growing up, and it really wasn't until halfway through college that I was pretty dramatically deflected by narrative and storytelling. But for me, there was never a profound difference between the fascination with process that a scientist has and the fascination with process that a storyteller has. Science seemed a distraction, or it seemed somehow cerebral as opposed to emotional, heady rather than hearty. And it was so clear to me that had to do with some kind of misapprehension of what it meant to be alive, of what it meant to tell your own personal story. And that's why I really love the direction that you've given this conversation from the beginning, that the story of unmaking the self is also a profoundly literary endeavor.
What a joy, and congratulations again on the Barry Lopez Award. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks so much.
When in doubt. When in doubt, wear faux leopard. When in doubt, err on the side of generosity. When in doubt, greet everyone as you would the Buddha. When in doubt, collect blessings from those who own nothing. When in doubt, absorb biographies to avoid life's major mistakes. When in doubt, make life's major mistakes. When in doubt, pay attention to the vendor shouting, Dios! Even when you find out he was only shouting, Gas! When in doubt, carry a handkerchief and a fan. When in doubt, thank everyone twice. When in doubt, heed the clouds. When in doubt, sleep on it. When in doubt, treat all sentient and insentient beings as kin. When in doubt, forgive us our myopia as we forgive those who are myopic against us. When in doubt, unreel your grief to a tree. When in doubt, remember this: we are all on a caucus race. There is no start, no finish. Everybody wins.
This is Orion. This is also Orion. It's taken us a little while to get from there to here. 4 decades, almost 200 issues, and a little over 7,000 pages. Starting this year, each of those pages is made entirely of garbage. Junk mail, homework, the packaging from your groceries, all washed without chlorine, turned into pulp, and recycled in a process that causes the deforestation of exactly 0 trees and ends up looking something like this. Take 48 of them and cover them on both sides with your innermost feelings about how to live in peace with the forests that once made your surroundings, and you'll have a magazine not unlike Orion. 49 if you include the covers. In all that time, and across all that space, you could have planted a seed in the ground and watched it become the tallest sycamore in your neighborhood. Or you could have learned to say the word tree in 31 different languages. Or maybe in that time, you made a website. This was, at one point, Orion's website. 10 years later, it looked like this. Now, it looks like this. And soon, it'll look like this. A growing library of impressions of land and sky, art and nourishment, strength and refuge, a document of lives bearing witness to the Anthropocene. With so much erosion and extraction around us, we look for stories of rootedness and renewal, and we bring them to you by screen or by page, with whatever fibers we can find. Please give as generously as you can to help sustain the voices that keep us growing.